Episode 20 The Riddle of the Sphinx. The central place in the new painting in the Temple of the Keeper of the Knowledge was given to man. It was undoubtedly a man, although he looked very strange, as if he was assembled from different parts that did not belong to him. The artist had painted him in the very middle of the canvas, and the space around it was divided into 5 different sectors. In the lower right corner were animals in the wild: an elephant, a gorilla, a tiger, and an eagle hovering over the woods. Devils were trying to get close to the man from the underworld in the lower left part, and masked people were depicted above them. It seemed that after putting on these masks they stopped seeing, because they were in a state of prostration, did not understand what was happening, stretching out their hands and trying to feel the air with them. There were angels in the upper right corner, and at the very top, surrounded by swirling purple clouds, the Lord sent his divine particle to the man. The man had a typical torso, a mask on his face, horns, and in the center of his forehead he had an eye framed by wings, which had been sent to him by God. But instead of human legs, he had hairy, ugly limbs of a devil with massive hooves. Long, pointed claws could be seen on his hands. A demonic tail hung from behind, but at the same time, angel wings shining with purity and whiteness spread out behind his back. The students carefully examined the new canvas, trying to notice as many details as possible and unravel their hidden meaning, trying to understand what each of them symbolized and how to properly understand it and use it for their spiritual growth. When the sage appeared in the hall, they already had their assumptions and questions ready. All of them turned joyfully to the entrance, watching the smooth flying gait of the keeper. Their faces immediately lit up with inner light and joy, which was inspired by the anticipation of a spiritual conversation. A short, petite woman in a long blue and white dress came forward. She had a shock of curly red hair, tied back with an elastic band. "Teacher," she respectfully addressed the sage, "we have got a new painting. We have studied it, but some things are not completely clear. Is it a human in the center, or a demon? But then why does he have angel wings? Please explain the meaning to us." The Keeper of the Knowledge stopped and looked at the red-haired student, sending her the energy of unconditional love that could be felt even on the physical plane. "Yes, Martha, today we will talk in detail about this." He shifted his gaze to the picture and pointed with an open palm to its center. "A man is painted here. Look, it is like a sphinx. It consists of different parts. And it is no coincidence that there are 5 sectors here. And in each, there are those who influence the man and give him something of their own. Animals are depicted here at the bottom. What do you think the man receives from them?" The sage addressed the question to the students and paused, waiting for their guesses. "Probably a body," Martha replied half interrogatively. "Well done," the teacher praised her. "Indeed, we get a body from animals." "And what do you mean by this? It's not in a literal sense, is it?" "Our physical body has very simple functions, like animals," the sage explained. "It can grow. It feels the need to reproduce. The body needs to eat, drink, and sleep. It digests food and receives primitive animal energy from these nutrients to maintain its own physiological processes and vital functions. And so, a person tries to satisfy these needs all his life. But, great sage, we can't, for example, live without eating or without sleeping, Martha said with a bit of surprise. Can we live without fulfilling these needs? The teacher paused, shifting his gaze from the painting to the students. A person should live in harmony with his animal nature. But it is important to understand that we are not only our physical body, not only our instincts. A person is much more. He nodded at the image again. It is no coincidence that it is shown here that we consist of 5 different parts. The sage smiled mysteriously and pointed to the lower left corner of the painting. Look, devils, demons, and larvae are painted here. From them, a person receives lies and negative emotions, and there is a lot of this negativity in the world. We are taught from childhood to experience emotions such as envy, resentment, anger, irritation. We absorb it from birth, using the examples of parents, relatives, and neighbors. We watch movies, TV series, and talk shows, which teach us to react to everything with hysteria, to take offense, to be jealous, to take revenge on offenders, to feel envy for the more successful and luckier ones. Devils kindle anger in us, making us commit such mortal sins as pride and vanity. This is all beautified in a variety of cultures. It turns out that we are partly demons and larvae? Asked one of the students, a skinny guy wearing round glasses and thin frames, and a plaid shirt with sleeves rolled up to his elbows. Since we have something from them in us? Yes, Leo, the keeper of the knowledge calmly confirmed. There is a dark side in every person. These are our negative emotions that push us to sin. But of course, we are not made up of this negativity alone. A person is much more than negative emotions. Having finished his thought, the teacher pointed to the segment of the picture with the masked people. Look, he said to the students, here is our personality. Why personality? There was such a word in the Latin language persona, which originally meant a mask. Look, these people are giving the man such a mask, a false face, and the man begins to play the roles imposed by society. Depending on our environment, we change these masks. At home, we play the role of a son, daughter, mother, father, brother, sister. At work, we play the roles of bosses and subordinates. In a circle of friends, we put on another mask. For example, the mask of a wit who constantly cracks jokes, or conversely, a whiner who constantly complains about life. But no matter what kind of mask a person puts on, he considers himself this false personality and constantly identifies with it. And often we spend our lives satisfying the needs of these false personalities. But the man is not our false identity. We are not one of them. The man is much more. With these words, the keeper of the knowledge turned his gaze to the upper right corner of the picture, where the angels were located. They were floating in a serene blue sky, and one of them was holding out snow-white wings to the man. Teacher, it turns out that we have been given something by the angels, Martha asked, following the sage's gaze. But what is it exactly? The ability to experience sublime emotions, he simply replied. A person can receive grace, bright divine joy, and supreme happiness when he does spiritual practices, when he prays to the Almighty, or when he does good deeds and helps other people. It turns out that if we experience sublime emotions, we become like angels, and if negative, we become like demons and larvae? Another student asked, a tall girl with bright greenish-brown eyes. Yes, that is right, Violetta. The sage smiled, giving the student a warm look. The more we experience sublime emotions, the more we develop the treasures of the soul and become like angels. And vice versa. The more we are angry or irritated, the more lies we tell, and the more we resemble devils and demons. Beloved teacher, do I understand correctly that we must cultivate these sublime emotions in ourselves? Otherwise, we will not be able to experience them? Violet asked again. Yes, that is right. The keeper of the knowledge nodded. If learning to experience negative emotions is not difficult, since the whole world is in the negativity, and we have been taught to do this since childhood, then with sublime emotions, the situation is reversed. In order to experience them, we must make efforts such as praying sincerely, listening to spiritual chants, doing good deeds. You say that we have been taught negative emotions since childhood? Violetta was amazed. But how? I don't remember any of my parents saying that being angry and lying is good. The sage smiled sadly. Negative emotions surround a child from birth, he explained. They are experienced by everyone, and we just imitate the behavior of adults. Plus, we watch cartoons, TV series, and talk shows where people swear at each other, constantly throw mud at each other. Children have a very subtle sense of how to behave in order to get what they want from their parents. The easiest way is throwing a tantrum and crying. The child first cries because he is uncomfortable or ill, for example, or he is hungry. And he quickly realizes that if he cries, the food will be brought faster. And then he starts crying because of his own whims, stomps his foot, and makes his mother buy, for example, an expensive toy. Then his mom indulges these whims, buying the toy for the child, and thus supports the manifestation of negative emotions in him. The child gets used to throwing tantrums and feeling offended. That is how it grows in him. For example, if it is a girl, then she gets married and starts throwing tantrums with her husband. And every time in these moments, devils take possession of a person, and our dark side manifests itself. And how can we be taught envy, for example? Violet asked. By constantly comparing the child with others. Parents say, but Pete got an A. He's good, not like you. Or, look, Pete doesn't run down the corridor. He's a good boy. And the child feels negativity towards Pete. Envy, hatred. And sublime emotions, can they be obtained only by prayer and by helping others? Martha asked. We have primordia of sublime emotions, but in order to develop them, we need to follow a spiritual path, the keeper replied. They manifest themselves when we are surrounded by like-minded people who are looking for the knowledge, who want to develop spiritually, do practices, work on themselves, and strive for God. That is, everyone can learn to experience them? Leo asked, looking attentively at the teacher and waiting for his answer. Yes, everyone is capable, but many people do not even feel the desire to begin to develop these primordia of sublime emotions. If the angelic nature is weak in a person, then he does not even strive for this. Only a few people really care about the development of sublime emotions in themselves, and then they become like angels. The keeper paused, during which he looked at the painting again and pointed to its upper part. And God is at the top, he continued. Look, Here he is sending the winged eye of the eye to the man. See? This is Atman, a piece of God, consciousness, which the man really is. This is the real us, the authentic us. This is the genuine self of the man. To realize yourself in Atman is the great meaning of life. Teacher, and how do you do it? Asked Klim, a young man with big expressive eyes and a neat red beard. How can we realize ourselves in Atman? The sage carefully looked at the disciple and began to explain. A person consists of different parts. He pointed with his palm in the direction of the picture. And we have to observe ourselves and see what is manifested in us at the moment. We have to learn how to track it, what guides us. Our animal nature or false personality? Are we experiencing negative or sublime emotions? And we must understand that if it is a lie and a negative emotion, then devils have become more active. And if we begin to pray and tune into the sublime, then angels have spoken to us, and sublime emotions have appeared. And when we begin to observe ourselves, we understand that it is not me. And then we realize that, as it turns out, I am consciousness, a piece of God. And when a person sees everything from the outside, he enlightens, and then real understanding begins to awaken. Then the sage pointed to the canvas hanging in the temple niche before continuing. And you can use this painting to observe and study yourself. Look at it and analyze yourself. What has manifested itself at the moment? Which part of us? And then we will better understand what is happening inside us. Following the teacher's gaze, the students turned their attention back to the image. A girl with a short, stylish haircut raised her hand. Pointing in the direction of the sphinx-like man on the canvas, she asked, "Teacher, the illustration shows how much we have from devils: legs, claws on our hands, a tail and horns, and from angels only one set of wings. Does this mean that there are more satanic elements in us?" "Yes, Inna, there are a lot of satanic elements in a person," the keeper calmly stated the fact. "What do we see around most often? Negative emotions and lies. So devils have a very strong effect on us. There is very little angelic in us. Therefore, we must observe ourselves. What do we have more of in us? What is currently being manifested? And when we try to reveal positive qualities in ourselves, then angel wings will be more noticeable." Great sage, and if a person is experiencing sublime emotions and angels manifest in him, then where is the part that we have from devils and demons? Inna asked the next question. "Devils are no longer acting at this moment," the sage replied. "They are hiding and waiting for when they can take possession of the person again. And when he is in the sublime, they can do nothing except get even more furious and wait for the person to stop praying and get off the spiritual path." "Teacher, when we worry about our body, about food, about comfort, are we in the animal part?" "Yes, the needs of our body are our animal part. Therefore, if we want to eat, drink, or experience sexual attraction, then our instinctive animal nature wakes up." Inna nodded and pondered, as if doubting whether to ask another question or not, which did not escape the sage's attentive gaze. He looked at the girl and smiled benevolently, and she felt support and absolute acceptance in his smile. And then she smiled back and asked, "Great sage, I try to observe myself, but lately I have often realized that the animal nature prevails in me, and angelic nature does not seem to be active at all, Inna admitted. Is it possible to create some kind of anchor in order to quickly move from the animal state to the angelic grace in order to become like angels? There must be a proper mood, the keeper replied. What helps us? Prayer, divine chants, sublime images. This is what needs to be consciously cultivated in ourselves. Negative emotions come to us by themselves, animal needs as well. They manifest themselves whether we want it or not. And you need to learn how to create a sublime state in yourself. It is not easy. Only weeds grow by themselves, and a good crop needs to be grown intentionally. Therefore, we must make efforts and tune in so that sublime nature appears in us. Since childhood, we have not been taught this, but on the contrary, we are taught to be offended, to feel jealous, to be lazy, to lie. So now that we are already accustomed to different behavior, it is difficult to do otherwise. A lot of filth, dirt, and identifications accumulate in us. Therefore, it is more difficult to learn to tune into the sublime. But it must be done. You must cultivate sublime emotions in ourselves, and for this, you need to tune in properly. Great sage. And does it matter how often we tune in like that? Martha asked. The teacher looked at the student carefully and smiled. If a person did not evoke a sublime emotion during the day, we can say that he lived the day in vain, he replied. Oh, that often? Inna was amazed. I thought that it happens very rarely on some special days. The more often we experience sublime emotions, the closer we get to angels and God. Therefore, in the morning we need to tune in, telling ourselves, I am beginning to experience sublime emotions, and rejoice in everything that happens to me. Even if someone criticizes me, points out mistakes, or starts to press on me, I will rejoice in this, despite the old reactions of resentment. I will learn to accept everything with joy and gratitude. And then the restructuring will begin, and angelic nature will begin to awaken in us. Great sage, when we move on to the subtle plane, we will have only the body on earth, and all the other 4 of our components from this illusion. Will they stay with us? Martha asked again. Yes, they will remain, the keeper unequivocally replied, accompanying his words with an affirmative nod. Great sage, do I understand correctly that we can change all this only here, on the earthly plane? The woman asked again, pointing to the image. How much from angels in us, and how much from demons and devils? And there. The student raised her index finger up in the direction of heaven. There we can't change it, right? The composition that was here will remain in the subtle world? Good question, Martha, the sage praised the woman. Yes, you assess correctly. That is exactly what we will find ourselves with on the subtle plane when we leave Earth. Therefore, we have to work on all this here. We can say that there is a sort of gym here and there. The teacher also raised his finger up to the sky and shook his head negatively. There are no dumbbells there. They are all here. And we should not be afraid of them. We must boldly start training. Beloved teacher, tell me, and if a person does not start training here, will he get to Earth again and again to get an opportunity for development? Violet asked. Yes, the sage confirmed. You very correctly understood the essence of a person's being here. We need to develop, to gain awareness. Otherwise, we will be sent here for many more lifetimes so that we finally begin to train and use the negative situations of our lives for development. And if a person still does not want to develop, Klim asked, joining in the conversation, then this person will go to war, be bombed, or something else will happen that will not allow him to hide from a problematic situation and avoid development in any way. Therefore, there is no need to wait for God to send us such conditions. We must strive for development and not wait for bombs to start falling on us. It is necessary to strive for spiritual teachers who will help in conscious development. Klim thanked the sage for the answer, thoughtfully looked at the picture, and after thinking for a few moments asked another question. Teacher, why exactly these particular body parts? Did the artist paint those unintentionally, or is there a hidden meaning in this? Our legs are from devils and larvae. At the level of the heart, there are wings. These are sublime emotions, our connection with God through the heart. But at the level of the head is Atman, and then there are horns and this mask. Is there a connection in this? It is good that you have noticed it, the keeper of the knowledge smiled approvingly. Of course there is a connection. The mask, for example, is connected with the mind, with our mental center, and it is more associated with the head, so the mask is on the head. Lies, negative emotions, are also in our mind, so there are also horns on the head. This part is in us from devils. It is in our mind that there is a lot of negative influence. Therefore, first of all, it is necessary to cleanse our mind and head, to get rid of identifications with false personalities, to get rid of lies and various negative emotions. Teacher, it is clear that negative emotions are from devils, but a false personality, is it when we have an idea about something like stereotypes and programs of society? Do I understand this correctly? Violetta asked, looking at the sage with reverent awe. And when you realize that this is exactly the case, is this a false identity? Just how do you track it in yourself? When you are firmly convinced of something? When you believe in your programs? Are these the stereotypes of a false personality? Yes, Violetta, well done. You were able to see the essence of things so deeply. These beliefs are manifestations of false personalities. Most often, they are not even ours. They were inspired to us, but we do not understand this. For example, your mother explained to you from early childhood how everything should be in life, and programmed you with these templates. And it would have been better if she had said, I have lived my life, but I do not know anything myself. Come on, daughter, start figuring it out yourself. Look for smart people who will explain it to you. Then she would have acted honestly, and you would have started to develop yourself. But instead, she inspires patterns and stereotypes, which are then very difficult to get rid of. And this lie, it is in our mind. Our mind, it turns out, has never thought independently, but has simply accepted all the lies as the truth since childhood. And in order to get rid of the patterns, our mind must begin to think for itself, try to understand everything, and figure everything out. Only then will the lie be defeated. Teacher, thank you very much for the clarifications. Violetta thanked the sage before asking a new question. Yesterday, you talked a lot about identification, that this is such a way of knowing the world, and that without identification, this game of God wouldn't exist. But if you look at this picture, the girl nodded toward the colorful canvas, it's easy to identify with negative emotions, with some false personalities, reactions, with something bad in yourself. And is there a way in addition to the spiritual practices that we do, or in general, to more strongly identify with angelic nature, so that this identification is stronger than identification with the negativity? After listening to such a detailed question from the student, the sage readily began to explain. This is the first stage of spiritual growth, he said. At first, a person identifies with something good. He just does not know yet that he can live without any identifications, and it would be easier for him that way. Therefore, the first thing to do is to identify with something good in order to disidentify with all false personalities and negativity. It should be so. A person identifies with something good and lives with dignity and nobility. But then we still have to get rid of all attachments, right? Martha asked. Yes, at the next stages of spiritual development, the sage confirmed. And at first we get attached to something good. We abandon the bad, the ugly. And then we go further and look at everything from the outside and enlighten. Klim raised his hand again. Teacher, is it possible to divide these components of our sphinx into two poles, good and evil? The man pointed to the left side of the canvas. For example, devils and society actually work together. After all, imposed programs give rise to negative emotions, and God and angels are good, because sublime emotions can only be cultivated consciously. And the body, it turns out, occupies a neutral position. It works like a biorobot, and it's not bad or good. Is it possible to divide it like this? Yes, it is, the sage confirmed, but only about the body. It can be both good and evil. What do you mean? Please explain, asked Klim. If the body was healthy, it would function properly, but it has been disfigured since childhood. For example, a child wants to run and jump, yet his teacher says to him it's nap time. You have to lie down and rest. And the child does not want to lie down, but he is put to bed against his will. Then the teacher turns away for 5 minutes and the child immediately gets out of bed and starts playing. And then the teacher puts him on a chair and says, "Sit here. Apologize for being naughty because you are too active. You can't be so active. Look at Pete. What a calm boy. Why aren't you like him?" And it's the same with food. It often happens that parents overfeed their children, saying, "Here comes the choo-choo train," Klim suddenly remembered. Can this also be an example? Yes, this also, the sage confirmed. In fact, unhealthy habits are instilled in us, and we get used to overeating, being lazy, passively sitting on the couch and watching TV. And then, this unhealthy body with incorrect reactions begins to interfere with us. And then we are constantly thinking about how to lie down and eat. This becomes the main thing because the body has been broken, and now it needs to be treated for these reactions and habits. And if the body is cured, then it will function normally and will not prevent the person from walking on the spiritual path. When he finished speaking, the keeper looked around attentively at his disciples. They were in an active state of spiritual search. Many had bright eyes, inspired, and some had come to important realizations during the conversation. The keeper saw that their consciousness had now become clear and free of the patterns, free of thoughts and stereotypes imposed by society. The students had learned a lot of new things and had been able to ask interesting questions. They tried to comprehend the deep meaning of the knowledge and reach the truth. The sage smiled his transparent, bright smile, and began to recite the lines of a spiritual poem. Do not condemn unjustly with the law that you don't know. It was instilled in you by the evil one in the attempt to hide his fault. All the faults and vices that you can see in the world are only flaws and vices that he himself behold. Those malicious judgments, prejudice, and blasphemy only multiplied the delusions and fed the root of the evil spirit. You show us your countenance. Beware the others of the vice that created grief in your heart, that warmed a snake in your bosom. In the anguish of conscience for your own vile deeds, a lighter conscience will be born that won't have a place in the darkness. After the storm of remorse, your soul will find the needed peace, as well as purity and charm, of a love so great and ethereal. The End. We invite you to join spiritual seminars, workshops, and retreats hosted by the Leader Masters. Reveal your superpowers, find your predestination, and accumulate power to gain well-being and bring your goals to life. Send an email saying, "I want to join the seminar" to our mailbox, and we will give you all the information. See you soon.